So you remember back in January of 2021 when Joe Biden was inaugurated and Donald Trump took off on a plane and began his incessant insistence that the 2020 election had been stolen, and it went on and on and on and on. Well, if you remember that, then you'll certainly recall that he then transitioned, at least now and then, into rants about witch hunts and the weaponized Department of Justice. Those complaints stemmed from all the indictments and lawsuits that he faced, and in most cases lost, from all over the U.S. Well, despite his insistence on how that entire process was rigged, and that it was a tragedy inside of a sham wrapped up in a travesty, he's now changed his tune. He actually posted to Truth Social on September 20th a list of folks that he wanted dealt with immediately by his Department of Justice. And lo and behold, days later, the first indictment appeared. So in this episode of Your Neighbor on the Left, we'll see what actual weaponized justice looks like. We'll debunk Trump's UN rant about climate change. We'll talk about the newly uncovered UAE bribery scandal. And after skipping it last week, we'll end on a high note. Let's do it. Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode of Your Neighbor on the Left, the podcast where we talk about liberal politics, human decency, and life on the blue side of America's ideological divide. My name is Don Spielis, your host. Now, while this past 6 or 7 days of news cycles wasn't quite as jam-packed with craziness and noteworthy stories as the period preceding our last episode, there was no shortage of things to pick from, and I'd like to start off with discussing the part of President Trump's speech to the UN that focused on climate change. Because in a speech that was full of a lot of chest thumping and nonsense, the information, and I use that term loosely, that he gave about climate change as he addressed the delegates from around the world was about as devoid of any sense and truth as anything he's ever said. So let's cut through the noise right away. Last week, September 23rd to be exact, President Trump took the stage at the United Nations General Assembly in New York. It was his first big speech in his second term, and boy, did he let loose. Clocking in at over an hour, it was a rambling roast of the UN itself, NATO, immigration, and yeah, a hefty chunk on climate change. He called it a hoax, trashed renewable energy as a joke, and painted a picture of the world crumbling under green policies, while America thrives on good old fossil fuels. Sound familiar? Of course it does. It's Trump 101, but dialed up for a global audience. Now, if you're listening to this and you're one of the people who are skeptical about this whole climate change thing, maybe you've heard the talking points about scientists disagreeing or how going green will bankrupt us and kill jobs. Stick with me. I'm not here to lecture or to throw charts at you. I'm just the average guy chatting over the fence, wanting to lay out the facts plain and simple. But here's the deal. Trump was not just wrong on this. He's been peddling the same distortions for years, and it's time we called it what it is. Persistent misinformation that's holding us back from real solutions that could make our lives better our air cleaner, and our economy stronger. By the end of this segment, I hope you'll see why ignoring the science isn't skepticism. It's just missing out on a smarter path forward. So let's break down what he said, quote by quote, and stack it up against reality. I'll pull from the full transcript of his speech and cross-check with reports from places like the International Energy Agency, the IPCC, and even U.S. government data. No spin, just straight talk. Okay, first up, Trump's big swing at renewable energy. He said, quote, "We're getting rid of the falsely named renewables. By the way, they're a joke. They don't work. They're too expensive. They're not strong enough to fire up the plants that you need to make your country great. The wind doesn't blow. Those big windmills are so pathetic and so bad, so expensive to operate." End quote. He went on about how they rust and rot and lose money with massive subsidies. Okay, pause. If you're picturing those giant wind turbines as unreliable eyesores that barely turn, I get it. They can look clunky from the highway. But think of them like that old pickup truck in your driveway. Yeah, it gets you there, but a hybrid? It saves on gas, runs quieter, and doesn't choke the air with exhaust. Renewables aren't perfect yet, but they're not the scam Trump paints. Here's the reality. In 2024 alone, renewables and nuclear made up 80% of new global electricity growth, hitting 40% of the world's total power for the first time. Right here in the US, solar and wind powered 16% of our electricity last year. More than coal. And get this. The International Energy Agency says renewables will cover 95% of global electricity demand growth through 2027. They're scaling up fast because they've gotten ridiculously cheaper. Over 90% of new solar and wind projects cost less than fossil fuels. Solar PV is 41% cheaper on average. Onshore wind, 53%. That's from the International Renewable Energy Agency, not some random tree hugger blog. Trump's been saying this "don't work" line since 2016, like when he claimed windmills cause cancer. You remember that? It's the same playbook. Exaggerate the flaws, ignore the wins. But if renewables were such a bust, why are companies like Google and Amazon powering their data centers with them? Why did Texas, of all places, lead the U.S. in wind energy last year? It's working, folks. And for doubters, imagine slashing your power bill by half without waiting for the sun or wind. Batteries and smart grids are making that happen now. This isn't pie in the sky. It's powering homes and factories today, creating energy independence so we're not beholden to foreign oil cartels. Next, Trump zeroes in on China. Quote, "Most of them," meaning the windmills, "are built in China, and I give China a lot of credit. They build them, but there are very few wind farms. So why is that they build them and they send them all over the world, but they barely use them? You know what? They use coal, they use gas, they use almost anything, but they don't like wind." End quote. So I'll say this. It's half right and half wildly off. Yeah, China dominates manufacturing. They make about 80% of the world's solar panels and turbines. But barely use them? No. In 2024, solar and wind made up 20% of China's electricity. That's huge for a country their size. Sure, they're still the top coal burner, 58% of global use last year, but even they're pivoting. China installed more solar in 2024 than the rest of the world combined. Trump's cherry picking to make it sound hypocritical. But it's like saying America doesn't believe in cars because we still have horses in some parades. The truth? China's leading the charge on renewables because they see the economic edge. Jobs, exports, tech dominance. If even they're investing billions, maybe it's worth a second look instead of dismissing it as a plot. On to Europe. Trump claimed they're on the brink of destruction because of the green energy agenda. He praised Germany specifically. Quote, "They were going green, and they were going bankrupt. They went back to where they were with fossil fuel and with nuclear. They've said this is a disaster," end quote. This one is a doozy because the reality is so fresh off the press. Just 8 days before Trump's speech, September 15th, Germany's Federal Minister for Economic Affairs and Energy, Katharina Reich, gave a speech calling renewable expansion undoubtedly a great success. 60% of their electricity now comes from wind, solar, and other renewables. She did say the transition's at a crossroads, stressing reliability and affordability, but her office is still locked in on 80% renewables by 2030. No disaster. U-turn? They're tweaking, not ditching. And Europe's not bankrupt. GDP growth was 1.2% in 2024, with renewables saving them billions in fuel imports. Trump's echoing his 2019 claims about Germany dying on energy, but it's the same old tune. For skeptics, Europe's green push isn't about virtue signaling. It's about dodging Russia's gas stranglehold. They cut energy costs by 20% last year through wind and solar. If a manufacturing powerhouse like Germany can thrive on this, why wouldn't it work for American factories too? Less reliance on volatile oil prices means more predictable bills for you and me. Now the heart of it. Trump on climate science itself. He dusted off some ancient UN quotes to dunk. Quote, "In 1982, the executive director of the United Nations Environmental Program predicted that by the year 2000, climate change would cause a global catastrophe. What happened? Here we are." End quote. And another from 1989 that said, "Within a decade, entire nations could be wiped off the map. Not happening." End quote. He wrapped it up calling climate change the greatest con job perpetrated by the world. If you've ever thought, they said the ice caps would melt by now and we're still skiing, I hear you. Those old predictions sound alarmist in hindsight. But here's the key. Science learns and refines. Those 1980s warnings were early flags based on what they knew at the time. Like the first weather forecast saying maybe rain tomorrow before radar came. Today's consensus isn't guesswork. It's built on decades of data from satellites, ice cores, and thousands of peer-reviewed studies. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the UN's own gold standard, with input from 195 countries, says unequivocally, human activities, mostly greenhouse gases, have caused global warming. Our own U.S. National Climate Assessment, involving thousands of American scientists, backs it. Without cuts, risks to health, farms, and coasts will spike. And the National Academy of Sciences just confirmed this year the EPA's 2009 finding on climate threats, quote, has stood the test of time and is beyond scientific dispute, end quote. Trump's cherry-picking failed forecast to trash the whole field, but 97% of climate scientists agree on the basics. It's real, we're causing it, and it's accelerating. Sea levels up 8 to 9 inches since 1980. Sea levels up 8 to 9 inches since 1880. Mostly last 50 years. Heat waves twice as likely. For doubters, we're not talking about Al Gore's mansion here. We're talking about your grandkids' backyards flooding or Midwest droughts hitting corn prices. And we see it everywhere we look. Wilder storms, hotter summers. Denying it doesn't make it go away. It just leaves us unprepared. He tied it to the Paris Agreement, too, calling it a scam that rips off America while others slack. We've heard this since 2017. Fact: Paris lets every country set their pace. China and India ramp up coal, but the U.S. withdrawal cost us leadership and jobs in clean tech exports. Rejoining could boost GDP by $3 trillion by 2030. On jobs, quote, reducing carbon emissions costs jobs, end quote. Wrong again. Clean energy jobs grew 3 times faster than the overall economy in 2024. Over 500,000 added in 5 years. 82% of new energy jobs last year were green. Fossil fuels, stagnant or shrinking. It's not or. Solar installers in Ohio are keeping factories humming without the pollution that sickens kids' lungs. Then there's this wild one. Quote, Europe loses 175,000 people to heat death each year because the cost is so expensive that you can't turn on the air conditioner, all in the name of pretending to stop the global warming hoax. Yikes. Europe's warming twice as fast as the global average since the 80s. 2024 was brutal. Second highest heat stress days on record. Heat deaths are up, but blaming green policies, that is backwards. Europe's older buildings weren't built for air conditioning because summers were milder pre-climate change. Costs play a role in poorer areas, but the real driver is hotter weather from emissions, mostly fossil fuels. Ironically, renewables lower energy prices long term. Germany's household bills dropped 15% last year thanks to wind. Trump is flipping cause and effect to scare people. And finally, his love letter to coal. He has a standing order in the White House to always say, clean, beautiful coal. Coal's abundant, that's for sure. But clean, it spews CO2, 55% of U.S. power plant emissions in 22 from just 20% of electricity supplied. Plus sulfur, mercury, particulates causing asthma, acid rain, brain damage in kids. Scrubbers help to a certain degree, but they don't touch the climate warming CO2. Trump's beautiful is code for ignoring the health bills. $100 billion a year in U.S. externalities from coal pollution. Look, Trump's been at this for a decade. Wind kills birds, but cats kill more. Oceans aren't rising. Tell that to Miami. Scientists are in on the con for grants. It's a pattern. Doubt the experts, hype the fear, protect the donors. But science isn't a poll, it's evidence. And the evidence shows acting now saves money. $7 trillion in global benefits by 2030 from renewables. So to the doubters, I was skeptical once too. I grew up in the coal region of Pennsylvania. Everyone I knew used coal, and everyone thought that this was alarmism. But dig in. NASA's data, NOAA's records, it's measurable, like tracking your truck's mileage. And the upside? Jobs in your backyard. Solar farms in rural red states paying better than coal mines. Energy security so Putin can't hold us hostage. Cleaner air so your kids play outside without wheezing. None of Trump's speech at the UN was real leadership, but particularly climate change was a rerun. But we can choose better. Talk to your neighbors. Push for policies that invest in American innovation, not denial. Because the planet doesn't vote, but we do. And a stable climate is the ultimate national security. Now, this won't be the first time that we've talked about how the lines between big government decisions and fat paydays for the president's inner circle get blurred. But it's certainly the newest one, and perhaps one of the biggest. We're talking about a blockbuster New York Times investigation from just 2 weeks ago, September 15th, that's got Washington buzzing and ethics watchdogs howling. It's a tale of cryptocurrency, windfalls, super advanced computer chips, and a royal from the United Arab Emirates who seems to be playing both sides of the deal. And at the center, none other than Donald Trump and his crew, turning national security talks into what looks a lot like a family business boost. Now, don't worry if crypto sounds like gibberish. I'll break it down as simple as I can, like explaining a new app to your uncle who still uses a flip phone. Crypto is basically digital money, not backed by gold or governments, but by math and computers. Think Bitcoin. You can buy it, sell it, or use it to invest in startups that promise to make trading this stuff easier and faster. No banks needed, just your phone and some internet. It's volatile. Prices swing wild like a bad stock tip, but it's exploded in popularity with trillions in value floating around. Now, imagine Trump's family launching a crypto company right as he's back in the White House. That's where this story kicks off. The headline: in giant deals, UAE got chips and Trump team got crypto riches. It's not outright bribery, no smoking gun email saying chips for cash, but the timing and the ties are so tight, they've got even some Trump folks raising eyebrows. Let's unpack the two massive deals at the heart of it, step by step. Deal 1, the crypto jackpot. Back in May at a glitzy conference in Dubai, Zach Witkoff, son of Steve Witkoff, who's Trump's hand-picked Middle East envoy, takes the stage and drops a bomb. His family's new crypto startup, called World Liberty Financial, just scored a $2 billion investment from an Emirati. Who's footing the bill? Sheikh Tahnoon bin Zayed Al Nahyan, a 56-year-old UAE royal who looks like he stepped out of a spy novel. Always in shades because of an eye condition, controls $1.5 trillion in sovereign wealth, and runs the UAE's national security. His investment arm funnels the cash into World Liberty, which the Witkoffs and Trumps founded together. Boom. Overnight, this fledgling firm catapults into the big leagues of crypto, potentially raking in tens of millions a year in fees. For context, that's like getting a blank check from a foreign oil baron to launch your garage band into stadium status. But wait, there's a twist. One of Sheikh Tahnoon's top execs at his tech giant G42 was moonlighting as a senior advisor for World Liberty during these talks. Yeah, the same guy bridging the UAE's AI ambitions and the Trump crypto play. Very cozy. Now, deal 2. The AI chips bonanza. Just 2 weeks after that Dubai announcement, the White House greenlights a huge expansion in selling the world's hottest commodity to the UAE, NVIDIA's advanced AI chips. These aren't your laptop processors. They're the brains powering the AI revolution. Scarcer than concert tickets right now because of export controls to keep them out of rivals' hands like China. The UAE gets hundreds of thousands of them, mostly headed to, you guessed it, G42, Sheikh Tahnoon's sprawling tech empire that's been flagged for potential China ties. National security hawks in the administration pushed back hard, worried these chips would end up fueling Beijing's tech race. But the deal rolled forward anyway. Who's steering this ship? Enter Steve Witkoff himself. As Trump's Middle East fixer, he's lobbying hard for the UAE on the chips, emails and calls a-flying, while his son and the Trumps are pocketing that $2 billion from the crypto infusion. Federal ethics rules flat out say no. Officials can't touch matters that could fatten their own wallets or their kids. Witkoff's team swears he recused himself, but a fresh disclosure shows he still owns stake in World Liberty as of August. The White House, they're like, he's divesting, working with ethics folks. And don't forget David Sachs, Trump's shiny new AI crypto czar, a Silicon Valley VC who's still cutting deals in the Valley while shaping White House policy. He got a special ethics waiver to join the chip negotiations, but insiders griped. How is it kosher for a guy with skin in the game to broker sales that juice his whole industry? The Times talked to over 75 different sources, emails, interviews, and pieced together how these threads intertwined, even as Trump admin staff tried to slam on the brakes. So what flipped the switch? Get this. Conservative firebrand Laura Loomer. Yeah, the one who's all over your social media feed, jumped in with the White House tirade, flipping the internal power play toward the UAE. Suddenly, the chips deal is a go, and World Liberty's laughing all the way to the bank. The White House and World Liberty, well, they deny any link, calling the crypto cash totally unrelated to government business. G42, they say, we're all about integrity with audits to keep U.S. tech safe. But ethics experts aren't buying it. 3 former officials told the Times this shreds U.S. norms. No mixing family fortunes with foreign policy. Brad Carson, ex-Army undersecretary, nailed it. You want national security calls in America's interest, not the commercial wins of insiders. And here's the kicker that really makes it sting. Remember how Trump built his brand blasting others for this exact playbook? Back in 2016, he hammered Hillary Clinton as Crooked Hillary, accusing her and Bill of selling access through the Clinton Foundation. Foreign donors like the UAE itself dropping millions for speeches and influence. He tweeted, Hillary Clinton's foundation is a scam. Foreign governments pay to play. Well, fast forward to 2020, and it's Joe Biden's turn. This is a disgrace. Foreign countries are giving Hunter Biden millions of dollars. Trump raged about Ukraine and China deals, vowing impeachments and investigations. Yet under Trump, his business pocketed $7.8 million from 20 foreign countries during his first term. Golf resorts, hotels, you name it. He promised no new foreign deals in office, but his org kept them coming, from Saudi-backed towers to Chinese trademarks for Ivanka. Hypocrisy? Or just business as usual in Trump land? The fallout's already rolling. Senators Elizabeth Warren and Alyssa Slotkin fired off a letter last week demanding a probe into how deep this foreign crypto grift goes. Trump family, aides, the works. Eric Trump jumped on the defense, telling the bloc his dad's the first guy who hasn't made money off the presidency. Democrats are calling it incredible corruption, while even some conservatives whisper about the emoluments clause and violations thereof. That's Article 1 of the Constitution, saying no foreign perks for federal office holders. Now look, this isn't abstract. It's about trust. When a president's envoy is hawking chips that could supercharge a foreign power's AI game, all while his kid's crypto app gets a royal bailout, it erodes faith in who's actually calling the shots, us or the yacht crowd. The UAE wins tech dominance, Trump's circle wins riches, and as for us, we're left wondering if national security is just another deal on the table. All right, and that brings us to our main topic for this episode. We're diving into the indictment of former FBI Director James Comey. Yes, that James Comey, the tall drink of water who became a household name during the 2016 election circus. This story's got everything: leaks, lies, and a hefty dose of presidential pettiness. Justice, I think, is a thing that we all say we value and that we all strive for, but this isn't justice. It's just terror for Trump's enemies. So let's get into it. First off, let's set the stage. James Comey was FBI director from 2013 to 2017, appointed by Obama and fired by Trump in what many saw as a move to squash the Russia investigation. Remember his bombshell announcement about Hillary Clinton's emails? In July 2016, he cleared her, but called her extremely careless. Then, right before the election, he reopened the probe over some new emails, only to close it again. Democrats blamed him for tipping the scales to Trump, while Republicans thought he went easy on her. Fast forward, and Comey's out, leaking memos about Trump pressuring him to drop the Flynn probe, which kicked off the Mueller investigation. Now, flash to September 25th, 2025. Just 3 days ago, a federal grand jury in the Eastern District of Virginia indicts Comey on 2 felony counts. The charges? Count 1, making false statements to Congress under 18 U.S.C. 1001. Count 2, obstruction of a congressional proceeding under 18 U.S.C. 1505. If convicted, he could face up to 5 years in prison. What exactly did he supposedly do? It ties back to his September 2020 testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Prosecutors say Comey lied when he denied authorizing an FBI official, his buddy actually, to act as an anonymous source leaking details about the Clinton email probe to the media. This was allegedly to influence public opinion during the 2016 election mess. The indictment's pretty thin, just 2 pages, and even the grand jury shot down a third charge about not reading some FBI report on Clinton's campaign tactics. Comey's team, led by his pal Patrick Fitzgerald, says he's innocent and ready for trial. He posted on social media, "I'm innocent, so let's have a trial." But here's where it gets juicy, and by juicy I mean dripping with hypocrisy. This indictment just didn't materialize out of thin air. President Trump, on September 20th, posted to Truth Social what many suspect was supposed to be a text. It was addressed, so to speak, to Attorney General Pam Bondi. It rambled on about all the grief he was taking over the lack of indictments for his favored list of enemies and laid out all the folks he wanted targeted. Then, just days before the indictment, Trump fires the U.S. attorney in Virginia who wouldn't play ball, replacing him with Lindsey Halligan, a Trump loyalist. And right after the news broke, Trump took to Truth Social crowing about it. He posted something like, "Justice in America. One of the worst human beings this country has ever been exposed to is James Comey, the former corrupt head of the FBI. Today he was indicted by a grand jury on charges of lying under oath." End quote. He even added, "They impeached me twice and indicted me 5 times. Over nothing. Justice must be served now." And then he hinted at more to come for his other foes. Folks, this is not subtle. Trump basically asked for this indictment in a public post, and poof, here it is. Attorney General Pam Bondi called it, "No one is above the law," but critics are screaming selective prosecution. Now let's talk about that hypocrisy I mentioned. If lying to Congress or blowing off subpoenas is such a big deal, why haven't we seen the same hammer drop on conservatives who've done the exact same thing? Take the January 6th committee subpoenas. House Republicans like Jim Jordan of Ohio, Scott Perry of Pennsylvania, Andy Biggs of Arizona, Kevin McCarthy, and Mo Brooks all got subpoenaed for their roles or communications centered around the Capitol riot. They straight up ignored them. No showing up, no documents, nothing. And what happened? Darkness and crickets. No indictments, no jail time, no nothing. The committee referred them for ethics violations, but that went nowhere. Going back even further, remember Scooter Libby? Dick Cheney's chief of staff lied to investigators and a grand jury in the Valerie Plame affair, got convicted, but Bush commuted his sentence, and Trump later pardoned him fully. Or Oliver North, if you want to go back even farther, in the Iran-Contra scandal, lied to Congress about arms sales, convicted on 3 counts, but appeals overturned it, and he became a conservative hero. And don't get me started on Roger Clemens, the baseball star accused of lying to Congress about steroids, acquitted after a mistrial. The point is, lying to Congress rarely leads to real consequences, especially if you're in the right club. But for Comey, a guy who's crossed Trump, boom, indicted. Now listen, I'm not saying Comey's a saint. His handling of the 2016 stuff was messy. And if he did lie, he should face the music. But you can't avoid the idea that this smells like revenge, not righteousness. Trump's using the DOJ like his personal hit squad, and that's dangerous for democracy. Not to mention the fact that it flies in the face of everything he yelled about all through Joe Biden's administration. So time will tell, and we'll see in the coming weeks and months what actually gets made or doesn't get made out of this Comey case. But the bigger picture here is that this could be the start to a trend. That Truth Social post itself mentioned several different names of people that Trump wanted targeted. And would anybody be surprised if indictments with those names suddenly pop up in the coming weeks? And what does that mean for anyone who dares to come out against anything the president does over the next 4 years? And now, the high note. We've talked about some topics in this episode that are bound to leave us all a little deflated. So let's take a detour to a place that feels like a little bit of fresh air. Picture this. A tiny island off the coast of Rhode Island, where the waves crash like they're applauding the sunrise, and the biggest drama is whether the ferry's running on time. That's Block Island, home to about 1,000 year-round souls, a patchwork of beaches, lighthouses, and one very special school that's got my heart smiling today. On September 26, just 2 days ago, the Block Island School pulled off what can only be described as pure magic. This isn't some sprawling urban campus with marble halls and endless funding. It's a cozy public K-12 serving just 100 kids, where the gym doubles as the auditorium and the playground overlooks the Atlantic. It's the kind of place where everyone knows your name, your dog's name, and probably what you had for breakfast. But like so many rural schools across America, it's been scraping by. Budgets tighter than a sailor's knot, art supplies rationed like gold dust, and field trips, those are the stuff of legends whispered about in the lunch line. It was a crisp fall morning, the leaves just starting to turn that golden Rhode Island red. Principal Lisa McMahon had gathered the whole school, kids from kindergarten munchkins to high school seniors, in the gym for what they thought was just another assembly. Maybe a pep talk about the upcoming soccer season or a quick reminder about recycling. The air buzzed with that familiar kid energy. Sneakers squeaking on the floor, whispers about weekend plans, a few giggles echoing off the walls. Teacher Sarah Jenkins, who's been there for 15 years and could probably recite the lunch menu from memory, was up front, chatting with the principal, when suddenly the doors swung open. In walks a parade of smiling faces, alumni from as far away as California and New York, some in faded school hoodies, others clutching wrapped boxes like it was Christmas Eve. No fanfare, no big announcement, just boxes and bags overflowing with crayons, paints, sketch pads, and even a stack of bus tickets for that dream field trip to the Newport Art Museum. $5,000 in total, all anonymous at first, crowdfunded in a frenzy of love from folks who once sat in those same creaky chairs. The room erupted. Kids' eyes went wide as saucers. Little Emma in the 3rd grade clutched her stuffed whale so tight you could hear the seam strain, while the high schoolers, usually too cool for school, pun intended, let out whoops that rattled the rafters. "Is this real?" one boy yelled, his voice cracking with that mix of joy and disbelief. Principal McMahon, well, she teared up right there, hugging teachers who'd been dipping in their own pockets for months just to keep the art room stocked. Sarah Jenkins later told a local reporter, "It was like the sun broke through a storm cloud we didn't even know was there. These kids, they've got so much creativity bottled up, and now they've got the tools to let it loose." But here's where it gets even better. The backstory that's got me grinning. It all started a few weeks back with a simple video. One of the teachers, Mike Rossi, posted a 30-second clip on TikTok and Instagram. Him standing in the school's art room, holding up a half-empty jar of tempera paint, saying, "Hey, Block Island alums, remember finger painting that mural on the boathouse? We need your help to keep the colors coming for the next generation." Nothing fancy, no dramatic music, just Mike's earnest face and a plea for $1 donations to cover basics. It went viral overnight. 10,000 views turning into 100,000, shares from celebrities who'd summered on the island, and a flood of messages like, "I learned to dream in that school, consider it done." By the next morning, the GoFundMe, they switched to that for ease, was at $2,000, then $4,000. Alumni from the class of '85 chipped in for a set of professional watercolors, remembering how those same paints sparked their first college applications. A group of '05 grads covered the field trip, texting each other, "We never got to go, let's make sure they do." And get this. One anonymous donor, a big shot tech guy who'd washed dishes at the island's ice cream shop back in high school, dropped $1,000 with a note, "For the kid who feels like an outsider, this place made me feel seen." The assembly wasn't the end. Oh no. These Block Islanders turned it into a launch pad for more goodness. Right there on the spot, the kids brainstormed. Let's paint a gratitude mural on the ferry dock. By lunchtime, they'd sketched it out. Whimsical waves of blue and green, handprints from every grade, quotes like, "Thank you for believing in us," woven in with seashells and stars. High school art club seniors were leading the charge, mentoring the little ones, turning what could have been a one-and-done gift into a permanent beacon for every visitor stepping off the boat. Imagine docking at Block Island and being greeted by that explosion of color, A reminder that small places can spark big waves of kindness. And the ripple? It's already spreading. Schools in nearby Connecticut and even a tiny one in Maine reached out, inspired to post their own Help Us Create videos. Donations are trickling in nationwide. Folks saying, if a speck on the map like Block Island can rally like this, what's our excuse? In a time when headlines scream about divided communities and stretched-thin resources, this is the antidote. Proof that when we remember where we came from, we build bridges back to each other. No politics, no agendas, just people showing up with paintbrushes and open hearts. Sarah Jenkins wrapped it up best in an interview yesterday. These kids aren't just getting supplies. They're getting a message that they're worth investing in. That the world sees their light and wants to help it shine brighter. And the principal? She added, we've got 100 dreamers here, and today they dreamed a little bigger. So neighbors, the next time you're feeling the weight of the world, whether it's budget cuts hitting your local library or just the daily grind, think of that gym on Block Island, those squeaky sneakers, those wide-eyed hugs, that mural waiting to bloom by the sea. It's a whisper that says, we've got this together. If it moves you, maybe drop $1 to a school near you, or share a story from your old stomping ground. Who knows? Your small act could be the surprise that lights up someone's assembly. And that brings this episode of Your Neighbor on the Left to a close. As always, I want to thank you sincerely for taking the time to listen, and I would love to hear from you. You can reach out to the podcast using any one of the social media platforms. The addresses for those are all on our Linktree page, and the Linktree URL is in the episode description. You can also use email. The email address is neighborotleftpodcast@gmail.com. I'm interested in critiques, comments, complaints, compliments, whatever it is that you might want to share. We'll be back on Friday with another Back Porch Files. So until then, stay vigilant, stay kind, and as always, have the week you'd wish for others.